Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Executive Roast. I'm Emma Bagley, host of this podcast and owner of Zeal Agency, an Amazon marketing and management company for e-commerce brands. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Charlie Sargeant. Charlie, please introduce yourself, what your area of expertise is, and how you help agencies and brands in e-commerce space.
Nice, cool. I absolutely did know the title of this before I came on, but it's made me slightly nervous now. The executive roasts about how I'm potentially about to be roasted. So there we go. There's a nice little intro into what's happening in my brain right now. So in terms of, I know you, and I know that's not the case. So a bit of background on me and what I do. My background is predominantly in paid social advertising, so meta advertising, and also creative strategy. I am ex-agency world, ex-agency leadership team. So I was heading up the paid social and creative strategy departments at an agency here in the UK, where we were overseeing around 22 million a year in ad spend, 30 clients, a team of 14 people. Feels like a lifetime ago now, but very, very hectic. Now I am a consultant and I help agencies and brands to put together creative strategy workflows and processes to have really, really effective creative strategies for their ads and their businesses. I help them to train the teams and just really cut the wasted ad spend and wasted time.
Thank you. And I believe you also got a course as well for people in your in working in the world of meta ads. So
Yes.
you tell me a little bit about your course, please.
So I basically came up with a system for doing creative strategy because when I left agency world, I took a creative strategy delivery role and was like, holy cow, this is really hard. And I had my customer testimonials and my behavioral psychology and all my foreplay boards with ad examples. But then when I wanted to put that together into a creative brief and a cohesive strategy for my clients, I was like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what I should be prioritizing. I really can't do this. So after having a little bit of a crisis of confidence about my entire career, I decided that I'd come up with a strategy to kind of bring some clarity to that system and get really consistent, robust performance for our clients. So since then, I have left agency world completely, and I now that system is what I teach in agencies and brands. And I also have a program where I help other freelancers to use this system to get creative strategy results for their clients as well. So basically, just it kind of, I guess, my business. I'm the founder of the Creative Strategy Lab. That's my business, and it's all kind of centered around that system that I built. So I kind of help freelancers to use the system to get better results for their clients and close more clients. I help agencies to use the system so that they can get better results for their clients and they can just be really efficient and robust with their processes. And then I help e-com brands directly as well. If they have their paid social teams and creative production in-house, they also need help with that same kind of those efficiencies that agencies need. But it all is centered around this really cool, funky system that I've built.
Amazing. So you got so much experience there, so much experience of working with brands, teams, creative strategy. And so how can people find out more about working with you, whether they are a freelancer and interested in your course, or they are an agency and really need some help in terms of upping their creative strategy game?
So you can go to my website, which is thecreativestrategylab.com, but it's a little bit underdeveloped as a scrappy founder myself, finding my way. It does tend to be the last thing that gets updated, but you can join my email newsletter there where I send tons of content and resources, or find me on LinkedIn and Charlotte Sargeant, the Creative Strategy Lab. That's where I am the most active in terms of sharing content, sharing ideas and wins. And yeah, I'm probably the most responsive there. You're better off getting me on LinkedIn than email most of the time. So yeah, if you want to check out what we're up to, go and check out LinkedIn.
Thank you. Okay. So the format of this podcast is not to be roasted, but they'll make really short.
Roasted. I like roasting.
I will ask you a question and then it will be over to you for you to answer that question as much detail as you'd like. Because I know you've got so much knowledge and expertise. These questions, we could talk for hours about creative strategy and helping e-commerce brands. So I'll ask you some questions and then open the floor to you. So the aim of this podcast is really to deliver value to people who just want the answer to certain questions. So less conversational in style, just super sharp, bring in your expertise in answer to my questions. So starting with question number 1. So in terms of, we've talked about creative strategy, we've talked about meta ads, some people might still be unclear about actually what does creative strategy mean. I'm not a designer. So can you please explain what exactly is creative strategy when it comes to meta ads, and why do you believe, and I know you've worked with so many brands and managed so much ad spend, so why do you believe it make or break factor in campaign performance?
Such a good question, because people talk about creative strategy a lot, and I think there are really varied definitions of it. And I looked at that question and thought maybe I should do a bit of research on this and give a really factually correct answer. But I don't know if there really is one. So creative strategy is really just being strategic about the ad creative that you're putting out there. And to not use the exact same words, because that's a terrible way to give a summary or a definition. It's just about being really, really intentional with what you're putting in your ads, so that you have a much better chance of converting people through your advertising efforts. And it is surprising how many brands and agencies even now don't really put a lot of thought into this. Something that we hear a lot in our industry, especially from brands, is, I'm sick of agencies just throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. And I think that does happen a lot. Um, Creative strategy, a lot of people talk about it as a really new field, but it isn't really that new. We've been advertising for donkey's years, go back even to the 60s. If you've ever watched Mad Men, hilarious, absolutely watch it. Doing magazine advertising or newspaper advertising. So this isn't new. Being intentional about what we say and how we communicate our messages isn't new, but people think creative strategy is new. And I think a lot of the times, not to be too offensive, but the people that see creative strategies, this really new and exciting up and coming field, were maybe not as intentional about their marketing as they probably should have been in the past. Because if they weren't being intentional with their marketing efforts, then they were probably not being very strategic, and they were probably falling into that camp of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So for me, yeah, creative strategy, it kind of focuses around two core things. One is what you say. So what's the actual message that you're communicating? What is it about your product or service that is interesting and relevant to your prospecting audience? Why should they sit up and listen? Why should they care? And obviously, why should they pull their credit cards out and purchase whatever it is that you're selling? So the message is really important. And then the second part of it, especially for paid social advertising, in creative strategy, is the visual way that you're communicating that message. So the messaging is, I guess, kind of like the conversion mechanism, I would say, and the visual is the kind of attracting attention mechanism, because both are super important. We know on a busy news feed, it's really difficult to grab people's attention now. I don't know what the latest stats is. I think it's something like 0.3 milliseconds we've got to kind of try and get people's attention. And we know it from our own behaviors, right? We're scrolling the newsfeed, got Coronation Street on in the background, the dog's outside, the kettle's boiling because you're about to make a cup of tea. You're super distracted. You're barely even really taking in whatever it is that you're scrolling past. And so the visual is a really great way to kind of interrupt that scrolling pattern. So the visual is like a really important way of us being able to do that. And then the messaging can also do the same thing, depending on what problem it is that you solve or how you help your customers. If you can put a message on the ad that resonates with your customer so much that there's absolutely no way they can scroll past it, then your advert is doing a really kind of great job of what it's supposed to be doing, of communicating what it is that you can offer to help your prospective audience.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question about what you were just saying, throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And I know from working with you, Charlie, it isn't a case of coming up with one ad creative and knowing that that will work. It's an ongoing learning and testing process. So can you explain that a little bit more, please, for me? How you
Yeah, I think, yeah, totally. So I think, as I said, back in the olden days, people were still coming up with messaging and still writing ads, even if they weren't necessarily being super strategic about it. And that can sometimes be throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. Maybe, you're a copywriter, a D2C copywriter in an agency, and perhaps you're writing ads for a brand, and the only thing that you get during onboarding is like a link to the brand's website. And you've got to then, as the copywriter, go to the website and try and find the right messages. So that is what I kind of think around throwing things at the wall. Now, if we wanted to be more strategic about that, we can do certain things to try and figure out what is actually most important to our customers. So for me, it's that shift. As the brand, you're going to have ideas around what you think your customers value the most. As a founder, if you're feeding into that marketing messaging, there's always a reason why a founder creates a business. And quite often it's a story about a pain point or a problem that they were trying to solve for themselves. And so quite often marketing can get really structured around that one kind of blinkered view, because there's a bit of bias within the brand, and that's absolutely fine. And that is usually the point where it's the right time to bring an agency in to have a look at the wider picture. But really what we want to be doing is looking at it to the customer's eyes, not the brand's eyes. And that's why quite often, with a D2C copywriter, they get a link to a brand's website. They're going to be met with all the things that the brand believes are the most important to the customer, not looking at what customers say about what they actually really like about the product. So that's one of the ways that we can make it really structured and not just throw things at the wall, is look at what customers are actually saying. So have a look at testimonials, reviews, see what kind of experiences really stood out to people. And I particularly love doing this with reviews, because what we tend to find is people who've had an overwhelmingly positive experience will leave a review, and likewise people who've had an overwhelmingly negative experience are likely to read a review. If you've ever looked at, an Amazon listing with 10,000 reviews, and you look at the weighting of the 5-star versus 4, 3, 2, 1, you'll see the biggest chunks are generally in the 1-star and the 5-star. Because the people in the middle who had an average experience, they weren't passionate enough to do anything about it. And so when we take the 5-star reviews of our brand, those people have had a really fantastic experience with us. They felt inspired and excited enough about what they experienced to go and leave a review. So that's where the gold is for our marketing messaging. When we make our customers feel that excited, empowered, and inspired, we want to know exactly what it was that made them feel that way, so we can tap into that for our messaging. So that's really where I start in terms of making a testing plan, is then breaking those different elements that we can find, or different dimensions that we can find from really kind of interrogating customer reviews into a testing plan, and then systematically testing those things to see which one performs the best.
Thank you. And it's constant testing process, isn't it? With the creative and the copy,
Yeah,
learning what works. Yeah.
absolutely. And really the reason for that, I can just expand on that a bit as well, is there will be different personas within your buying audience that buy for different reasons. So if we just stick with that one thing, the founder's reason for creating the business, and go with that, we're kind of ignoring a whole massive host of our total addressable market that could be potential customers for us. And so when we start to come up with different ideas around how people are using our products or services, we can tap into different pain points or different desired outcomes, different transformations, and we can then start to reach a much broader reach within that addressable market that we've got. And the algorithm in paid social especially is fantastic at picking up on this. So let's say it's a cleaning product, and some people use it to clean up baby mess, some people use it to clean up pet mess, some people use it just in their bathrooms. So there's 3 things there that you could talk about in the ads, 3 different things. And when you talk about cleaning up baby mess in the ad, the algorithm can see that. Literally, it can read your copy, it can look at your creative, and it says, oh, this is for parents. Okay, I'll go and find some parents and I'll serve this out to parents. And then you've got your pet ad talking about cleaning up pet mess. Oh, these are pet owners. I know all the audience that are pet owners. I'll serve this ad to all of the pet owners. And this is, if we only ever talked about the baby audience, we never would have got in front of the pet audience. And therefore, we're going to be really restricted in what kind of audiences we can reach, and therefore what kind of audiences we can convert, and really limit the scale of the business as a whole.
Love it. Thank you very much. So challenger brands, they may have a fantastic product, they've got some budget, they haven't maybe got as many customer testimonials as you've just referenced in the last question, but how should they approach meta ads differently, being a challenger brand, if they want to build both brand awareness and ultimately get sales? So what's your perspective on this, please?
If you're a challenger brand coming into the market and you don't have many testimonials, the first thing I usually suggest is look at the testimonials of your closest competitors. And I know brands hate it when I say that. I can literally see the frustration in their face when I tell them this, and I do completely understand that. But really, it's about, like I said, moving the conversation away from you as the brand, what you think the value is, to understanding what the customer is experiencing in terms of value. So even if you are a challenger brand and you're doing things slightly differently, there's still going to be another brand within your niche that does something similar enough to you that it's worthwhile you going and looking at their customer testimonials. Because, if your cleaner, I don't know, is an enzyme cleaner and theirs isn't an enzyme cleaner, sure, that's a really different feature of the product. And that's not to say that we need to ignore that, because we shouldn't, but we can still look at cleaning brands out there and what were customers' experiences of cleaning brands that we can tap into. So is it, my house doesn't smell anymore? Is it, I'm not embarrassed by those stains on the carpet? Is it, I want my house to smell like Marks and Spencer's? I don't know. Whatever it is kind of the feature differences in the products don't change the end customer experience or what they wanted, the problems they were trying to move away from, the outcomes they were trying to get towards, the transformations that they were seeking. So if you are a challenger brand, I know it's painful, but go and have a look at some of your competitors, and take a look at, your biggest competitor with the biggest review set, and do some digging around in there to try and understand from a category or a niche perspective, what are the customers' experiences. And then in terms of what you asked about awareness versus conversion, this can be really challenging, because if we have to really educate people on our product before they're going to buy, if we're that much of a challenger brand that our product needs some explanation or some education, Meta can be an extremely challenging platform to do that, because it's quite expensive. It's expensive to get yourself out there. And so if you need to educate people before getting them to buy, you're going to see quite expensive cost per acquisitions there. There are ways that we can do that, absolutely, by thinking about it from like a content perspective. So there are different levels of awareness in any kind of typical classic marketing view, which is like completely unaware. The user isn't even aware that they've got the problem. And then you have your problem aware people who know they've got a problem, but they don't know how to solve it. Then you've got solution aware people who understand the problem they've got. They know roughly the solution that they need. Then you've got the product aware people who know the problem and the solution, and they're aware of your product. And then you've got the most aware people where, yeah, you're basically just trying to convince them to choose you. So at each of those different stages of the funnel, you really want to have different messaging. So, if you're trying to get to those bottom of funnel warm audiences who are product aware, give them a really juicy incentive. Remove barriers by showing how many 5-star reviews you've got. Give them something trust building there to show that they can trust to buy from you. Now that message wouldn't work for someone who is solution aware, because they don't know that this product is going to solve the problem that they've got. So you telling them that you've got hundreds of 5-star reviews and you're going to give them a 20% discount is irrelevant, because they're not at that awareness understanding yet of this is the product that's going to solve the painful problem that I've got. So it's really important that you think about those different parts of like awareness funnel and tailor your content to those things. So if you want to come in and do a bit of brand awareness activity and a bit of conversion activity, your conversion activity, you want to be chasing those people who are more solution aware and product aware with the types of messaging that give incentives and build trust and break down purchase barriers. If you want to raise brand awareness, then you want to be going way, way, way up in that funnel and go more towards like the problem aware people. So maybe you're then talking a bit more about sick of your house smelling like dog. Gosh, we get it. And did you know that enzymes can help, like enzyme cleaners can help with this, or whatever it is. You have to kind of do a bit of that education piece, and you can't always make that huge jump from like problem aware to buy our product. Sometimes you can, and you should absolutely always be testing that, especially if it's a low average order value product. And so the barriers to conversion aren't as high. Those messages can still work really, really well in conversion. But I guess maybe it's more for the completely unaware people that don't even necessarily know they've got a problem. And they definitely don't know there's a solution. And they definitely don't know that you're a brand that can solve that problem. That type of messaging is never going to work. It's just going to fall on deaf ears. You're not going to stop the scroll no matter how great your visual is or how great your message is, because it's not relevant to that person. They're just going to scroll straight past. So if you're a challenger brand coming in, that would be what I would think about, is mapping out those different levels of the funnel and thinking about content to those different types. And then when it comes to the techie pressing the buttons bit on paid social, you might want to do like a sales conversion objective for people at that bottom level of awareness or the most aware. And then the people up at the top, you maybe do something like video views objective or like a brand recall lift type of campaign, so that you can just get in front of more audiences and educate them on what it is that you're doing and what you're all about.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful, because I'm sure there's challenger brands out there that can work with some agencies or freelancers that promise the earth, that just thinking by spending lots of money for loads of socials, because that's the world we live in right now, it's not going to work and you're just going to bleed your ad budget dry. So, yeah, no, that's really, really helpful kind of structure for challenger brands to think about. Thank you.
Just to build on that a little bit, sorry, as well, I think, and this isn't my speciality, so I won't speak to this too much, but in that space of like being a challenger brand and wanting to grow that awareness, I talked a bit there about, objectives like video views or brand recall lift, in Meta, that I would say a really big part of any challenger brand should be an organic strategy as well, because there's going to be opportunity to get lots of organic reach if you can have a good organic content strategy. You can get a lot of reach for free if the algorithm, like if you can create something that gets a bit of virality, that's interesting, that's entertaining, that's educational, it can get quite a lot of exposure without a single penny of ad spend, which is really, really exciting. I think especially for a challenger brand, especially if they're a bit cash strapped and can't afford to invest a lot in advertising spend, because like I said, if you need to educate people before they're ready to buy, that's going to be a very expensive channel for you in paid social. So if you can do some of the education in a low cost way or in a non-spend way, that can really help alleviate some of that financial pressure.
Great top tips. Thank you very much. So, flipping it slightly in terms of mature brands, brands where everybody knows about this product and they're doing super well, they're flying on Amazon and spending money on Google, everything's just working really harmoniously. There may be a misconception that actually you don't need to spend money on meta ads. So, just a question then, really. What role should, in your opinion, meta play in that kind of ad mix, if any?
Um, I think it was probably somebody super smart like David Ogilvy. I can't remember, I might be wrong who said this, but somebody was smart, said that, in any pool of buyers, really only 5% of people are ready to buy your thing right now. Let's stick with the cleaner that we've been kind of toying with in this session. If you have a pet that makes, I don't know, sometimes every now and then wheeze on the carpet in the house, and you see an ad that comes up like, has your pet weed on the carpet? And you think, no, they haven't. But that's good to know that this brand can help me if my dog does wee on the carpet, but they're not ready to buy right now. But they know then that you can help them solve that problem. Now, a person, again, I can't remember the exact numbers. I actually think it's in the thousands now. The amount of advertising messages that we see in a day is in the thousands, from scrolling, driving to work, passing billboards, whatever, on the back of the milk carton. I don't even know if they're advertising. Sorry. But yeah, we're bombarded with advertising messages. So, expecting someone to remember that ad that they saw 2 months ago, that you can help them clean the dog wee up on the carpet when the dog finally wees on the carpet, they're not going to remember you or the name to be able to go and search you and find you. Even if you're a well-established brand, like if you're a household name, then maybe slightly differently, but you can be a quite established e-com business and still most people won't recognize your brand by name. Most people don't even recognize by brand name what they shop for in the supermarket. They have like a repertoire of brands that they'll buy, and it's probably the one that's on offer that they buy on that any given day. But whether they can recall all the brand names or not, in the kind of focus groups, it doesn't actually, brand recall doesn't like rank that highly. And so in the online space, it's even more competitive because you're competing with every other advertiser online in every single moment of a person's online life experience. So really what we want to do is, like, even as a well-established brand, we need to keep ourselves front of mind so that when the customer does enter that phase of in the problem where we can solve it, we want to be their product of choice. And so when the dog does pee on the carpet, if we're not serving ads to kind of a consistent way, then another brand might tip us to the post and get in their newsfeed before us about cleaning up pee on the carpet, and we've lost the opportunity for a sale. So a lot of marketing is about making sure that you keep front of mind. And that doesn't just have to be paid social, right? We should, especially if you've already, had that customer, keep engaging them with email campaigns. Make sure your Google ad presence is there, your Amazon ad presence is there, your organic presence is there. I really do believe that any brand should have an omni-channel marketing approach. The minute you're relying on one channel for all of your sales, it's just a really dangerous place to be, because you can't control the social platforms. You can't control the algorithm. If Facebook made a change tomorrow, and it's happened before where they make changes to the algorithm, and then overnight it's like, holy cow, we've got to rebuild this entire strategy because now the algorithm wants something different. And that's completely outside of our control. So yeah, I would suggest, even for like well-known brands, there is a place with Meta to keep your brand front of mind. But I don't think I would never advise any brand to be kind of resting on their laurels, because there are always challenger brands that come out with new and exciting ways to do things. As humans, we love novelty. And so, yeah, maybe you're a bit of a boring brand, but you get the job done and something new and exciting comes along. If you're not keeping front of mind and reminding your customers, exactly how you solve that problem and exactly why they can trust you to solve that problem, they will stray. So, yeah, I'd say it's about having that, what's the word? Ever present presence, I guess. Yeah, exactly. That always on presence. So that when your customers are ready to buy, they choose you. And then making sure that you've got a really omni-channel approach so that you're not overly reliant on just one thing.
Thank you. Brilliant answer. Thank you very much. Okay. So, for all brands out there, then, from your insights, expertise, what's working well right now in meta ad creative and what's no longer cutting through? And you can talk about like UGC content or any kind of trends. So, kind of tell us what's working and what's not working, Charlie. Or is it
Um,
answer? Is it all like completely category and product dependent?
oh, I could give you a very politician's answer here, couldn't I? But I'm not going to do that because that's boring. Um, what I tend to say in this space is really like a lot of on organic, particularly, a lot of people will follow trends. And I think trend chasing has a place in an organic strategy, because we talked a little bit about, making content to try and encourage that virality. And you can absolutely jump on like trends to help speed up getting viral posts out there. However, trends change all the time. Trends change really quickly. Who's got time to be monitoring trends and creating content over and over again to kind of chase the trends and keep up with them? Especially from a paid perspective. With paid advertising, a lot of it is about optimization. So you need time for the algorithm to find the right audience for this ad, and then it will stabilize. If you're changing those ads all the time because you're trying to keep up with trends, you're just chasing your tail, and you're not going to have any stability, which long term will have negative impact on performance. So one of the things I talk about a lot, and I know a lot of advertisers will disagree with me, and that's cool. Come from me in the comments, and I'm really open to hearing other alternative views and alternative ways of approaching stuff. I'd love to chat it out. But for me, I think chasing trends for paid social is not a good use of time, because things change. What doesn't change is the human brain. So the limbic system is a part of the brain, the first part of the brain that ever formed something like 300,000 years ago, and it hasn't changed for 300,000 years. It's also the part of the brain that really kind of influences our behaviors and decision making. And yeah, it's not changed for 300 or 1,000 years. So I would strongly suggest that you spend a bit of time learning about consumer psychology rather than chasing trends, because then you're going to be able to create ads that have much more longevity, that are going to be able to serve your business but on a more like evergreen basis, but also that actually tap into real emotions and real experiences rather than trends that, yes, can be entertaining. Yes, they can be funny. Yes, they can elicit emotion if it's the kind of trend that works with your brand. And yeah, like I said, can make somebody laugh or make them feel entertained. But you're not going to be able to have the same real deep emotional connection you can have with a person or a potential customer by kind of tapping into behavioral psychology. Now, the one thing I say with that is with great power comes great responsibility, and don't be a marketer that abuses that ethically. That's just, super questionable, in my opinion, completely wrong. For me, it's not about making somebody feel so terrible about themselves that they have to buy this product to solve that problem. If you're going to tap into consumer psychology, do it from a place of I don't really know what the right word is. I just think people can misuse it. Yeah, exactly. Positivity and just ethically, I'd say. Because it is really powerful stuff, and it's not stuff we should play with. I don't think we should be, playing with people's emotions. But if your product or service does genuinely help to solve a problem, understand how that affects the end customer's life and talk about that. That's going to have much better longevity for your performance as a brand than chasing a trend that's going to kind of expire in a couple of weeks. So in terms of trends of what's working, I would say consumer psychology always works. Um, trust building always works. So if you have reviews that you can use, like testimonial overlays, like referencing a Trustpilot score if you've got it, if you've had press mentions, if you've been featured in any magazines, that can really help to build trust. So trust building is always a winner, I'd say, in paid social. What I'm seeing a lot of success with at the moment from static images is actually they're what I call like multi-message executions. So something like us versus them, where you have maybe 3 points about your unique value proposition and how that helps the customer. So you can actually then tell them 3 reasons to buy, basically. And why I think this tends to work really nicely in static is because if you were trying to do that same thing in a video, you would maybe need a script of like 20 to 30 seconds, and people don't watch videos for 20 to 30 seconds. Whereas in a static image, you can get quite a lot of information across in a really scannable way. And actually, then if the user decides this is worth paying attention to, then they can stop for longer. But in a video, you wouldn't even get to, the average watch time, I'd say, for most ads, if you're doing a good job, I see in ad accounts is maybe like 5 to 7 seconds. But if you've got 3 points, you might take 6 seconds to explain the first one. So they would never even get to like the final one. So I think multi-message executions in static images are doing really well at the moment. Be careful, don't overload with text so that it's like an essay that somebody sees and is like, gosh, I can't be bothered to read that scroll. So, use it with caution. But that works really well for statics. In terms of video, UGC is the hot topic at the moment. UGC is dead. I see that probably 3 times a day on LinkedIn. That's not my experience. Consumers are becoming more savvy. Think about your own experience is what I would always say on a newsfeed. When you scroll through and you see an ad that looks like user-generated content, watch it and think about how you feel. Do you think, oh my God, this is so corny, like this is obviously scripted, no thank you? Or do you think, wow, this content creator is like super engaging and is giving me a snippet into their life and this is really interesting and I want to see behind the curtain? So there are lots of different ways you can do UGC. Sometimes it feels really authentic, sometimes it feels really inauthentic. And what we are seeing is like consumer or like social media consumer behavior is moving away from that really scripted, inauthentic UGC because they can see right through it now. Influencer partnerships, especially with celebrities, you can spot it a mile off. Oh, I love this flash cleaning product, but it's awful. It's so cringy. And now, as we consume content on social media, we can spot that as consumers. We can spot that a mile off. So if you're creating ads, like really look at it as if you saw it in your newsfeed. Don't look at it as the creative strategist or the brand owner and think, would I stop and watch that? And if the answer is no, probably not going to perform very well. So keep it authentic, I would say.
Thank you. Well, that kind of concludes the main question. So I always like to end the podcast with, if we had a crystal ball question, how can you kind of see the world of e-commerce changing over the next 5 years? Do you have any predictions for us, or would love to see these?
So I think naturally AI is and will continue to turn everything on its head. I think we're going to start to see AI suggesting products a lot more than I think it is doing it a bit already. But I can kind of see AI becoming almost like a personal shopper, and people kind of operating with their own GPT accounts or whatever other accounts where they're kind of using AI a lot in their lives. Like I use it quite a lot for free therapy sometimes if I'm having a particularly awful day. Business coaching, content writing, food shopping, new recipe discovery. I use it for like everything. And I think it will start to become a phase where it will say, oh, hey, like this new product just came out. I know you were looking at buying a new speaker for your home. Like, have you seen this? And so I think for e-commerce, that's a really exciting but scary place to go, because how do we optimize a black box of AI to serve our products, right? Like even SEO now is becoming a funny space because the AI generated responses at the top of Google. We don't know yet, I guess, how these AI tools are finding the right information. Whereas before, when Google was serving up organic content in the search engine results page, we had a bit of an idea of how we could SEO optimize our websites to get at the top of that page. Now, most people aren't clicking on organic search engine results page, like articles and links. They're looking at the AI summaries. So how do we optimize to get into the AI summaries is going to be like the new thing. And if AI is going to start acting in this almost personal shopper way, how do we get AI to recommend our product over the competitor is going to be like a fascinating thing, I think, to see.
That's definitely evolving in the world of Amazon with the Reefus shopping tool as well. AI, so there's kind of a lot being discussed in the Amazon community about how we can best optimize our SEO and our creative content now that we've got Cosmos and Rufus as a tool. So, but yeah, I mean, that's just Amazon, isn't it? So, and a marketing team, how can you make sure they're optimized across all touch points for consumers?
Exactly, and then people are using, Perplexity, people are using, ChatGPT, people are using Claude, like, for different things, but how, you know, these are all gonna be we've got Gemini from Google, there's, like what's Microsoft's one? Know that. Anyway, we've got all of the big players in the tech space coming up with their own AI models to try and kind of win the AI race and, take the biggest piece of the pie, but they're all optimized in different ways. So at least with Google, when we were trying to figure out SEO, even that's still sometimes like quite a black box. At least we only had one algorithm to try and figure out, but now there's all of these AI models out there that people are using. If we want to be picked up by the AI models and recommended, how on earth are we going to optimize that? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we're going to start to see that becoming bigger.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with your crystal ball, actually, Charlie. So thank you very much.
Surprise, we agree on most things, I think.
Like, thank you so much. It was really, really enjoyed talking to you, as always. But just to remind everyone, so what the main way to contact you is through LinkedIn.
Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn, Charlotte
Um,
Sargeant.
would you say the two main ways of working with you if you're an agency and you really need somebody to come in and train and develop processes in terms of creative strategy, or if you're a freelancer, you can tap into your course? Anything else?
Absolutely. No, that's it. That is the main dealio. Gosh, you know my business. You're better at summarizing my business than I am. Can I hire you?
Thank you so much, Charlie. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.